This is Flight Training the Way I See It with Mike Schiffler. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode, the video podcast, and we're podcast of Flight Training the Way I See It. News and opinion, all about flight training, with your host, that's me, Mike Schiffler. And we've got quite a good show today. It's the February 2026 edition. And I'm going to start by talking about Redbird Migration, which is coming up on March the 3rd and 4th. And I'll be speaking there, and I'll tell you what I'm going to be up to there. And we're going to focus a little bit on IFR this show. We're going to talk about, did you know that an LPV approach is now classified as a precision approach? Then we're going to talk about two updates to some of our products. One product is the Endorsements and Scenarios book. The 3rd edition is now out. We added 17 new scenarios to that book. The flight instructor lesson plans have now been updated. So that includes the one for sport, private, recreational, commercial. Then we'll get back into the IFR stuff by talking about how many non-precision instrument approaches must be done on a Checkride or IPC instrument proficiency check. Then we're going to talk about the Flight School Association of North America, the VOSANA conference that's going on February 25 through 27. We'll talk about why you'd want to go, what they talk about, and that kind of thing, because most people don't understand this organization very well. Then we're going to answer an interesting question. Can you fly a Cessna 172 with just a driver's license? And we'll close out the show with 3 pro tips, just like normal. So let's get after it. Okay, Redbird Migration is coming up next week on March the 3rd and 4th in Lakeland, Florida. And Redbird Migration is put on now jointly by Redbird, which is a simulator company, and by Sporties. And it's going to be held at the museum on the Sun and Fun campus there. So I'll be there, along with many people that I know. It is a conference about flight training. It's probably the best conference on flight training you could ever attend. It's free. They provide you with dinner on one night with the awards for AOPA's Excellence Awards, then 2 lunches and 2 breakfasts. And there's no cost to join. Now, the last time I checked the website, there was a problem with registering. It looked like it was closed. I checked yesterday, the 24th, and it was back up again. So I'm not sure if they're nearing or have reached capacity. So if you're going to be there next week, you'll have a chance to meet up with me. I'm Mike Schiffler, and I'm the Director of Training at CFI Bootcamp. The conference will be the 3rd and 4th at the museum, Sun and Fun's campus in Lakeland, Florida. And this event is all about flight training. AOPA will also reveal the winners of the Flight Training Excellence Awards at the dinner on the last evening of the conference. So I'll be giving a talk at 4:15 on March the 3rd, and it's called Teaching the Hard Stuff for Initial CFI Training. This talk will center on 3 hotspots, and they are how to teach, number 1, the fundamentals of instructing. I have a brand new way to teach that. That makes a whole lot of sense. The second is endorsements and testing requirements. We're going to talk about ways to teach that. Very challenging topic. And number 3 is how to deliver a lesson from a lesson plan tailored for an individual learner. So if you go to Redbird Migration's website, which is easy to find, and you look for speakers, you'll find me there, and you'll find the venue, the breakout room, and you'll find out the dates and times. I just gave you the date, which is the 3rd, and the time is 4:15. I've spoken at Redbird Migration 3 times and have given talks and speeches at both Sun and Fun, EAA AirVenture, and other venues. So I'm planning to do this as a live broadcast. We think we have that arranged, not 100% sure. But if that is the case, we'll be sending a link to everybody so you can live stream in and hear that talk at Redbird Migration. So keep your ear to the floor, keep your ear to your email, and see if we got that. Now, registration for the conference, again, was showing closed, but I checked it again on the 24th, and it looked back open again, so I'm not sure. The conference free, so if you're thinking about going, I'd be quick to check whether registration is still available. Now let's talk about a little IFRE kind of stuff here for a minute. We don't usually do a lot of that, so I've been trying to include that here more often than not. So I'll try to make that a practice, get at least one thing in there for our IFR people out there. So what I want to talk about is, did you know that an LPV approach is now classified as a precision approach? So before the release of the latest instructing ACS, you're allowed to substitute an ILS approach for that, an LPV approach, as long as, here's the kicker, that the DA, the decision altitude, wasn't higher than 300 feet AGL. Now, an LPV approach is a localizer type approach with vertical guidance. It's a WAS approach. And so it behaves just like an ILS approach with the localizer and a glide slope. And the glide slope is surveyed, which means we know it's clear of obstructions. Now, the FAA at that point didn't classify the LPV approach as a precision approach. It only said it could be substituted for one, as I just mentioned. It's also important to say that an advisory glide slope, like one produced by Garmin for an LNAV approach, which is a plain vanilla GPS approach, for example, is not an approved vertical guidance. So if you see LNAV+V on your HSI or GPS, this is an advisory glide slope. It is not a surveyed glide slope. It simply connects all the step-down fixes so they're across at the altitude shown on the chart. It's not a surveyed glide slope, so it's therefore not approved for classification as a precision approach. Also, it's possible to fly the advisory glide slope all the way down the surface of the runway. That doesn't guarantee obstacle separation. So you should only use the advisory glide slope to the missed approach point or the VDP. Now, LNAV approaches will be called RNAV approaches on the approach plate. So I have one Austin Executive EDC. It's the RNAV GPS runway 13. And at the top left, you'll see it's WAS, W-A-S. It gives the channel. And you'll know that it's a LNAV approach because if you look at the bottom, at the minimums, you'll find LPV DA. And in this case, it's 870 feet, and you need a mile visibility, which is 250 feet over the ground. So that's how you know you have an LPV approach. Now, the latest copy of the instrument rating ACS clearly defines a precision approach. It's this. It's a standard instrument approach procedure to a published decision altitude using approved vertical guidance. There's no longer a reference to substitution or any altitude limitations. So this is in Appendix 3 of the instrument rating ACS, and it's under Precision Approach Task B. Hopefully that clears that up a little bit. It's no longer not considered a precision approach. It is a precision approach. Now let's talk about a book that we have just updated called Endorsements and Scenarios. It's the third edition now. Now this book is completely updated with 17 new scenarios, solutions, and where it makes sense, flowcharts to walk you through the regulations. The scenarios can be categorized by one-off scenarios like flight reviews, complex endorsements, those one-time activities. Then student pilot endorsements, we have a whole section in there like how to solo a student, cross-country training authorizations, operating in Class B, etc. All that's in there, including flowcharts. And we also have a section on initial pilot endorsements, so scenarios for initial certificates for private. Now, we built a new chapter for the recreational pilot. It's there. We also have commercial and CFI and additional ratings. In addition to that, there's additional category and class ratings other than ATP, something like, for example, commercial glider to airplane single engine land at the same level or seaplane. Then we have a completely new sport pilot section. There were 2 endorsements in there before. Now there are 12, and they include the latest rule changes with Mosaic, and they all have flowcharts where they make sense to have them, which guides you completely through the new regulations and provides the correct endorsements. Then we've updated the flight instructor side with some updated scenarios to comply with the new regulation that came out about recency of experience end dates and reinstatements. And we also have 2 scenarios for the instrument rating. So there are 2 scenarios that include one for the instrument rating and the other for the IPC. So this book is ready now. If you purchase the second edition within a year, you can get an updated copy of the book by emailing us at info@pilottraining.com. That's info@pilottraining.com. So there were 36 scenarios. Now there are 53 with solutions and flowcharts. We plan to include 15 new ones over the next 6 months, and I've written what I want those to be. I just haven't gone through the exercise of writing them yet. Anyone who gets this third edition, this new one, will get any updates for free for a year. So if you need to get it right away, you'd like to get this book, don't wait for the 15 more to be written. There's plenty in there to keep you busy. Now, really, there really isn't another way to test your knowledge of training and endorsements without using a CFI that you'd pay to see if you got it right or not, or where you got it wrong. This book presents the scenario, the solution in text, and if needed, a flowchart that steps you through the decision-making process and guides you through each of the FARs that led us to that decision of why this endorsement was required and what the training requirements were for it. So this is kind of the hard stuff in aviation. So that's now done. The other book that we updated is the Flight Instructor Lesson Plans book. So that's 400 pages or so. The lesson plans cover sport, private, recreational, commercial pilots for the academics. So things that would be on the oral, for example, in the beginning parts of the ACSs, and also the maneuver side of things. So this is the 6th edition now. Over 400 changes were made, including fixes to formatting, standards, punctuation, additional image titles. Some of the image titles weren't 100% correct, content in some places, and more. So this version is a solid foundation for both the academics and the ACS and the flight maneuvers. All the flight maneuvers, including the CFI demonstration stalls, are included. Now, this updated version is over 400 pages. It's the very book we use at CFI Bootcamp in our initial CFI Alpha, CFI Airplane training school, the ground school. It's used by hundreds and hundreds of flight instructors, maybe thousands, in training and by flight instructors teaching now. So this book has everything you need for Checkride style lesson plans. Now, if you purchase this book within a year, you can get an updated copy for free by, again, emailing info@cfibootcamp.com. It's available now. By the way, all of these books are on our website, cfibootcamp.com. You go to the top, over to the right, it says more, and you'll find our digital documents section. And you can buy things right there and it'll be delivered to you straight away. Okay, now back into a little IFR stuff. How many non-precision instrument approaches must be done on a CFI checkride or instrument proficiency check, an IPC? And the answer to this lies in the appendix in the instrument rating ACS. So by looking at just task 6, which is non-precision instrument approaches, task A, in the ACS, at first glance, it really doesn't specify, but that isn't quite right. There's a note that refers you to the appendix. So you got to look for the note. It's just below the objective. It says see Appendix 3, Aircraft, Equipment, and Operational Requirements and Limitations for information related to this task. So we got to go to Appendix 3. And when we get there, you'll find that it requires you to do at least 2 non-precision approaches. And it goes on to specify, so one has to be without the use of radar vectors, without the assistance of radar vectors, and it includes a procedure turn or course reversal. One has to be from an initial approach fix or TAA. One has to be without the use of an autopilot, and one has to be using backup or partial panel instrumentation. Now, granted, some of these can be combined, but be careful to do it in a realistic way. Make sure that what you're trying to combine would be real. So the other part of this requirement is it has to be 2 different non-precision approaches. Now, some people think they have to be on different navigation systems, but they do not. They just have to be 2 different non-precision approaches. Appendix 2 states that a instrument-rated flight instructor, so you have an instrument airplane rating on your flight instructor certificate, is an evaluator. They make that clear. They said so is a DP, so is an ASI, so is a check airman. They go through the list of those. So all the conditions of the ACS, all those conditions, including the appendix, apply. So you are required also to develop a plan of action of POA for the IPC. And if you look at an evaluator, who they are, it says an evaluator includes the following: aviation safety inspector, an ASI, a pilot examiner, other than an administrative pilot examiner, training center evaluators, TCEs, chief instructor, assistant chief instructor, or check instructor of a pilot school holding examining authority, or, here it is, instrument flight instructor, CFII, conducting an instrument proficiency check, IPC. You are an evaluator. Now, I'll have more to say about this in another article that focuses on circling approaches during a checkride or IPC, because it can be very difficult to comply with the requirements for a circling approach or circling approach to landing in VFR conditions. So if you want to look at this ahead of time, you can go to the instrument rating airplane ACS, Air of Operations 6 Task D circling approach. You'll need to maneuver down to either the downwind or base turn to count this towards a checkride or an IPC. So The issues become, what if circling is not authorized on the downwind that's used for the VFR traffic pattern under VFR conditions? So, for example, one of the approaches I'm thinking of, the VFR traffic pattern is on the side of the airport which says you're not allowed to circle. And so then you would wrongly think, oh, I'll just circle like it says. Well, you can't. So you make right traffic at this runway rather than left traffic. That's not allowed. At a non-towered airport, you've got to conform with the direction of turns. And so if they're making left traffic in this VFR, you're going to have to overfly that airport and join the VFR traffic pattern. You can't just circle because you're practicing IFR. You'd be turning contrary to the traffic pattern. So we're going to show you some solutions to all this in a future newsletter. Like I said, we're going to try to do more IFR things. So there's at least one or two things in each of the newsletters that cover for our IFR people. So again, that's Area of Operations 6 Task D, the circling approach. And look down there at in the skills area. It's says visually maneuver to a base or downwind leg appropriate for the landing runway and environmental conditions. So there you go. You got to at least get to the base or downwind leg. Okay, the Flight School Association of North America, FASANA, their conference is held on February 25 through 27. Today, I'm doing this is February 25th, and it's going to be held, it is being held in Coronado Island in San Diego, California. And this event features several tracks for attendees to follow, each focused on specific interests. So some of the sessions they have would be broken into safety. Number 2 would be the vendor showcase. Number 3, the business of flight training. And number 4, CFI and student focus. Now, since I attended this conference a long time ago, the second one, the organization and attendance have grown substantially. So CFI Bootcamp has exhibited in 2 of these. One was in Houston, Texas, and the other Orlando, Florida. At the second conference that I attended, there were about 30 attendees and just about maybe a handful of exhibitors, couple 3. This conference now has around 500 attendees and over 60 exhibitors. So hats off to Bob Rockmaker, the founder of FASANA, for growing this organization and giving flight schools a voice. So this is an organization mainly built for flight schools. So certainly it's a great place to go if you're a flight instructor. You'll get a lot out of it. Now I'm attaching the program guide in the newsletter, which you can get at cfibootcamp.com. Go all the way down to the bottom. You'll see a way to log in and get the newsletter, get that sent to you. But it's a PDF of the conference guide, the program guide. So hopefully you can look through that and see if that's something you'd like to attend in the future. The conference isn't cheap. It's several $100s. But because of that, you get very dedicated individuals and schools attending. You get people who aren't just dabbling around at this. There are people who have a really vested interest in it, and they're in this business, and it's very serious business for them. Okay, here's an interesting question. Can you fly a Cessna 172 with just a driver's license? And the answer to that is yes, you can. So if you hold a sport, recreational, private, commercial, or ATP certificate, you can fly a Cessna 172 without a medical and without basic med. All you need is your driving license. Now, you can have had your medical deferred or revoked to use this option. This is covered under the Sport Pilot Privileges, 61.315. The types of airplanes you're allowed to fly are in 61.316. Now, this rule has changed since last year, so it's a brand new rule. It was called Mosaic, the modernization of a special airworthiness certificate, and it included airplane changes along with pilot certificate and privilege changes. So now, you're able to fly a lot bigger and badder airplanes, including 182s, most of the Piper series, the Archers, the Warriors, 4-place airplanes, retractable gear airplanes, airplanes with variable pitch propellers that are manually operated. There's lots of stuff there. Now, maybe in your case, you hold a particular pilot certificate, maybe like commercial, ATP, private. You can use your driver's license option to exercise sport pilot privileges. Now, you're bound to the sport pilot limitations when you do that. And some of those are, for example, you can only have one passenger even though you have an ATP. If you're only using your driving license, you can fly something up to 4 seats. You can't fly at night unless you have basic med or a third-class medical or higher. And you have to have training for that, but you would already be exempt from that with your ratings because you already had that training. So a sport pilot would be bound, for example, to have the night training before they get the endorsement. Now, you can't fly above 10,000 MSL or 2,000 AGL, whichever is higher, not above 250 knots calibrated airspeed, And the clean stall speed of the airplane can't exceed 59 knots calibrated airspeed. There's no longer a weight limit. So Cessna 172 comes well under 59 knots as the clean stall speed. So the FAA also released an advisory circular that details many of these rule changes that make the sport pilot certificate more useful and appealing. So this in turn is going to allow pilots with higher levels of certificates to fly a lot more airplanes just using their driver's license. The AC, by the way, you'll be looking for would be AC 61-146, 61-146. Every instructor in every flight school should have a copy of this AC around because you're going to get these questions a lot. Okay, the last thing we're going to do is move into the pro tips. We've got 3 of them for you. So number 1 is, if possible, have your student finish training for the rating, pursuing, before taking the knowledge test. Don't allow test prep initially. Make sure you tell them not to use any test prep. Don't use Gleim, Shepherd Air, any of that stuff. Have them take a few practice tests when your training is getting completed and have them give you the results. Now, this is the real test of their knowledge. By using test prep, you're corrupting that. You really don't know what they don't know. You can then take that and make a plan to clear up these areas. And then they can use test prep after that as, to get the real score and to take the real test. So the ideal time to do this for a sport or private pilot is when the cross country phase is started. Then the stuff has context to it, right? They know what it's for. For instrument, it's the beginning of the IFR cross country. So nearly the end of training. For commercial, pretty much any time, the information's about the same as it is for private. There's just some added things. And for CFI airplane, initial, after completing training, if you can do it, because that test then has real meaning for you. Okay. Number 2 is be careful when recording flights with a camera. It's like a GoPro. If you give your students access to the videos, you could face liability down the road if something happens. So if something happens and it can be linked to something you said or showed was wrong, this becomes an issue. And when accidents happen, especially fatalities, then they'll always look at whoever was providing training, the airplane, who made it, who maintained it. And if they find video, you can guarantee they're going to go through it. And when they find errors and inconsistencies in what you've said, they're going to say, well, look at this. This person made so many errors. How could my student or how could my client not have had this accident? So using something like Cloud Ahoy would be preferred to the actual video because it's a reenactment of the flight. It is GPS data driven, but the images and things you see aren't you, and you're not talking over it. It's just the replay of the flight. So you can always use video and delete it if you want to, but my recommendation would be that you delete it after you've shown it to the client. Okay, number 3 is ForeFlight has a feature worth checking out that isn't widely known, and it's under the Airports tab. It's the comments button in the top right corner. Now, this is a crowdsourced area where pilots leave feedback on the airport, including fuel availability, nearby places to eat, FBOs, what they like, what they don't like about the airport, etc. And ForeFlight doesn't moderate them, so they are from real people. Now, a nice feature that ForeFlight provides here is an AI summary of all the comments at the top of each of the airport posts, so you get a quick idea of any issues or good stuff right away. Now, this is especially useful when there are many comments, having the AI summary. There's one other place, it's not in the newsletter that I'm using here as the basis, but I wanted to tell you something that people get night wrong all the time. And what I mean by that is when night begins. So night begins at the end of evening civil twilight. That's when it begins. And it stops at the beginning of morning civil twilight. That means that the sun sets and it penetrates 6 degrees below the horizon. As soon as that happens, that is night. Up until then, the sunset to then is civil twilight. And that's a function of your latitude. So the higher you go, the more the sun arcs and the less it goes straight up and over your head. So therefore, the arc can mean that it can take a long time for it to become night if it ever does. So it can take hours and hours after sunset for it to actually become night. Now, you cannot begin logging nighttime in your logbook until the end of evening civil twilight. You don't have to wait an hour after sunset. But you also have to be sure that it's night, because if you look at an airport called PABR, Papa Alpha Romeo Bravo, that was the old Barrow, Alaska. And during that time, there was no sunset or no sunrise for there about 2 or 3 weeks. So this is a blanket statement. You can do any training for any rating. For private, that you need to do the 3 hours of night, including the 10 takeoffs and landings in airport, the traffic pattern. For the commercial, a similar kind of thing, 5 hours of night, and for all the night stuff. You can do that at the end of evening civil twilight. You do not need to wait an hour. The hour part is only for carrying passengers. It's the only time you have to wait an hour after sunset. Now in ForeFlight, if you go to the top of the airport's tab, you'll see what looks like a sun up there on the sort of in the very top, near the top of it, and there's a little arrow next to it. And so it's giving you the sunrise and sunset right there. And if you click that arrow, you'll get the rest of the solar details. Like you'll get the end of evening civil twilight, you'll get the beginning of morning civil twilight. That data will be in there. And it'll also give you the sunset and sunrise time. So that's very handy for training. Okay, that's it. I'm going to get ready and go to Lakeland, Florida. Can you believe it? I'm going to be up there at Redbird Migration, and I'll be at the Hilton Garden Inn. So that's where I'm going to be staying, and all of our people, a lot of our people are going to be there. I already have confirmed at least 15, so I'm going to be talking a lot, which, of course, I like to talk. So there you go. That's it for this month, and hopefully it was useful to you, and hopefully we'll see you at Redbird Migration. I'll also be at Sun and Fun in Saith's booth, which is Site of Aviation and Flight Educators. So I'll be there for a few days, and for most of the time in the booth, I sort of hang out there. We also do our live show on Saturday, usually from the booth. So our Power Hour, which we do every Saturday from noon to 1, we have an after show. So noon to 1, we have a topic, and we have about 400 to 1,000 people in our Zoom room. You can find out about that. Just go to our website and go to Power Hours on the top, and you'll see how to get an invite to that, because you have to have a link to go to it. And then after that's Power Hour, after that thing is done, then we open up the mics in the room. And last week, for example, we ended it at 1. People were still talking in the room about aviation stuff until almost 6 o'clock at night. So we had 5 hours of open mic in there. And there can be some really outstanding people. We have people who write courses about the TERPs and PANOPS. We've got previous managers of the FAA Commercial and General Aviation Certification Division. We have ALPA was in there, past president of ALPA. I mean, all kinds of people are in there. We just never know who's going to be in there, right? Just whoever wants to talk, whatever they want to talk about. And if you have a question, that's a great place to get it answered. So show up there. I also want to put one little plug out for the Facebook study group, CFI Study Group. There is a group within Facebook called the CFI Study Group, which you should join. And what it is a place for CFIs in training to get answers to things. About 8,500 people in that, a lot of good posts answered by many of us, including me. And every Tuesday between 4 and 6 Pacific time, they have a Zoom call. It's free. About 30 people attend. And really, you can get all your questions answered by people who really know. And it's all free. Nothing costs you anything. Okay, and Dorothy Schick runs that. She's an amazing individual flight instructor. And Greg Brown is in there, who's an also amazing flight instructor. He wrote the Savvy Flight Instructor. He wrote for AOPA, and he wrote the Turbine Pilot's Manual, among with many other things he's written. So anyway, Greg Brown is in there to help out too, and we all are not shy about helping you get through this training process. Okay, that's it for this February 2026 edition podcast and video podcast of Flight Training the Way I See It. This has been a production of Flight Training the Way I See It. News, tips, and opinion.